It's time for a Big Blue Kickoff Live.
Nobody can ever tell you that you couldn't do it, because you did.
On Giants.com.
You know what I saw? New York Giant pride.
And the Giants mobile app.
17-14 is the final. One touchdown, we are world champions. Believe it, and it will happen.
Part of the Giants Podcast Network.
Let's go out there like a bunch of crazy dogs. Have some fun.
Happy Wednesday, everybody, and welcome to Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the Giants. I'm back. Hi, everybody. I've been with you for about 10 days here on Big Blue Kickoff Live. Happy to be back in the building, joined by my man Matthew Citak. And we have the Giants' second of 10 OTAs today at the Quest Diagnostics Training Center. Yesterday wasn't much of one. Technically, it was an OTA, but they're out there for about 40 minutes, and there was not one competitive period. It was basically phase two with like the two people on the field, the two groups on the field at the same time.
Yeah, Paul and I opened the show yesterday, and we barely even acknowledged OTAs. And like 10 minutes in, I had to, just be like, oh, by the way, there was a practice today. If you want to call it a practice, there really wasn't much.
No, it wasn't really a practice.
But technically, OTAs did start today, as in yesterday. Today was the first real OTA practice where there was a lot going on.
Yeah, and it was fun. It was almost an hour and 45 minutes of practice. Guys, just remember, and I'll use this to level set for everybody. By the way, we're from the Hackensack Meridian Health podcast too. Keep getting better. In OTAs, there are very stringent rules on what the team is allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do. So let's go through those details first, then we'll kind of break down everything that happened. So, no pads. That's number one.
No pads.
No contact. That's rule number two.
It's a big one.
So you might ask, how do you have an NFL practice if you don't wear pads and there's no contact? Well, you really can't. That's why when Brian Daboll spoke to the media before practice today, he basically called this a passing camp. That's what he called it. Because you can't run, you can't do one-on-ones up front with offensive line and defensive line. It's basically a lot of 7-on-7, and you're trying to get guys going and get the passing game coordinated and, those sort of things going where you try to get the receivers in sync with the quarterbacks, you get your defensive backfield on the field, and you're working on all that stuff together. So that's really what this is, Matt. It's not real football. It's a glorified 7-on-7 passing camp.
Yes, although I will say, we did see, I think, 2 runs today. 2 rushing touchdowns today.
We did, yes.
One of them was from Jackson Dart on a sort of QB scramble, although it looked like a design run, but it was a quarterback rush on what otherwise would have looked like a passing play. So
now, there's nothing,
it wasn't a real run.
And there's nothing against the rules here, but I could do without the diving. Like we don't need that.
28th.
Yes.
I don't see no one needs to be diving.
That is the competitiveness of everything. And I get that, but I feel like this is like the prelude, Matt, to the during the season. Slide. Just slide. Don't be too competitive, Jackson Dart. I love the attitude. Just don't be that competitive.
Although
please.
on the for sure touchdown run,
yes,
there was no dive. It was just a clear lane right into the end zone. And then there was that one Turbo Miller kind of toss.
Two of them, right?
Where he just outran everyone to the pylon. We spoke a lot about last offseason and last training camp about how when he runs, sometimes it looks like, when you're playing Madden and you hit the turbo button, all of a sudden there's a burst of speed. That's what he looked like on that toss play where he just outran everyone to the pylon, where some of the defenders were looking around like, how the heck did he just do that?
Yeah, and some guys in practice and without pads, this is something you can still see. So we're going to say a lot. You'll get calls, well, how did the offensive line look? I'm going to say, I don't know. You can't tell. What you can tell is guys that look physically different. And the reason his nickname's Turbo Miller puts on the Jets and is racing a defender to the pylon, it looks different. Yeah. He just looks faster. And that's what it looked like. Lane, the safety, kind of stayed with him on one of those. He had the one run to your point, then he had another kind of pass into the flat that he scored on. Then there was another one late too, where I think that was also a pass where he kind of ran to the pylon. Mm-hmm. So he had a chance to go. There were a couple Giants, by the way, we should bring this up as well in terms of what Brian Daboll said. Some veterans that are coming off of injuries that they're still kind of slowly working into things, and the way Brian Daboll spoke about it, they'll reevaluate these players as we go, and we'll see how much field work they're going to get. If we go by what we've seen in years past, usually guys like this, they'll hold out for a lot of the spring, and then they'll bring them back in the summer. Andrew Thomas is in that group. He's coming back from the foot injury. Malik Neighbors is still dealing with the toe injury that he's had kind of on and off, aggravating, going back to his college days, even that he played through a lot of last year. You also had a couple of guys. John Runyon is the other guy. He was that shoulder. Was he shoulder Runyon?
I believe.
Knee? I don't remember. Whatever his injury was, he's not back out there yet. He was doing drills, but he's not out there doing team stuff yet. So,
and we should preface all of this by saying, Coach Dable told the media prior to practice that everyone is here. Everyone is here in the building. It's just not everyone is actually going to be out on the practice field. Again, it's May. It's spring practices. If there's a guy that's not 100% healthy, they're not going to risk putting him out there for these practices that, at the end of the day, don't mean a whole much.
Yeah,
a lot, other
especially
than just
for veterans.
Other than just getting everyone sort of in a groove leading up to training camp, which obviously is still not for another 2 months. So everyone is here. Just because a guy is not necessarily participating in team drills on day 2 of OTAs, don't look into it too much. Coach Dable also said that there are several guys that are dealing with a bit of a stomach bug that's going around the building.
I was going to bring that up
so
next. Yeah,
he didn't go into details on who. A couple of players, that just were not out there today that we didn't know about any potential injury. I would assume that those are some of the guys dealing with a little stomach bug.
Put it this way, based on who wasn't out there yesterday and another guy that wasn't out there today, I think it might be going through the running back room a little bit.
Yeah, it's certainly possible.
So, yeah, they're dealing with that. But again, for a guy like Thomas, for a guy like Runyon, these are veteran offensive linemen that have been through the wars. There's no pads. You're not doing anything. Whatever. Nobody cares. For a guy like Malik Neighbors, who's going to be your star wide receiver this year, and it's a lower extremity injury, just get the man healthy.
Yes. He already showed last year. He's good. He's okay.
But he also showed last year that he did deal with nicks and bruises during the year, right?
Yeah.
Whether it was the concussion and then he had the lower body stuff later in the year. Just get the man 100% so he's good to go once the season starts. So there's no reason to have these guys on the field doing too much now if it could endanger them in the summer. So those are kind of the check marks. Now we talk about what actually happened at practice. Defense started off pretty quick here on the first, it's all red zone. Much like the Giants do at the start of training camp, at the start of OTAs, they try to do everything in compressed spaces, and the reason they do that is that you don't want guys doing full field sprints on 9 routes or post or goes or stop and goes or whatever, flies, fades, flags. So they have everything in compressed space, so there's not as much running to prevent soft tissue injuries like hamstrings and quads and calves and things like that. So everything was in the red zone today. It was 7-on-7, and it was team. But the defense came out first pass of practice, and I thought hopefully this is a sign of things to come for the defense. Tay Banks got his hand on the football, knocked it away, which was great. Mikey McFadden knocked the ball away in the next pass. Javon Holland was involved on a play. So the defense came out strong here in that first series. And look, the defense is usually ahead of the offense at this point, like it always is early. But I thought the defense came out and played really well early in the practice.
Yeah, I mean, were those the 11-on-11s?
That was 7-on-7.
7-on-7. Okay,
yeah, that was the 7-on-7.
7-on-7 was also when we got perhaps the play of the day.
Yep.
Which this was someone I mentioned in my Players to Watch during OTA's article posted on Giants.com last week. Just gotta say, but Dane Belton had the play of the day. He just made a incredible play on the ball, caught an interception. Again, this was on the goal line. Returned it for what easily would have been a pick six if this were a real game setting. And, Dane Belton has not gotten the most playing time over his first 3 seasons, but every single time he's been out on the field, whether it's on defense or special teams, he somehow gets the ball in his hands. He is like a ball magnet, whether it's interception, forcing a fumble, recovering a fumble. He's just a turnover machine. And again, first day of team drills of the entire season, and sure enough, Dane Belton has an interception, a pick six, return for a touchdown. It's great to see. Obviously he's likely going to be the number 3 safety with Javon Holland and Tyler Newbin taking the 1 and 2 spots in the safety room. But Dane Belton could still see a good amount of playing time this year, especially if he makes plays like he did in practice today. He could be seeing an even more of an increased role than what he's had in his first few seasons.
Now, to give the quarterback a pass, he did put the pass pretty much right into the chest of his wide receiver, who just did not hold on to it. So,
hey, Belton made a great play on the ball.
No, but Belton did, because it was kind of it should have been caught, but once it wasn't, it was kind of a 50-50 ball, right? So he ended up getting it off the deflection and bring it back the other way. So that was a really nice play out of Belton. But again, I just don't want to make people think that the quarterback just threw it like right to him. It was a terrible pass. It was a pass that probably should have been caught. But a good job by Belton taking advantage of his opportunity to get the pick.
And one other thing.
Yeah, please.
Because you mentioned before about some of the injured guys that were not really getting any playing time. I think it is equally as important to mention that there were guys that dealt with injuries last year that were taking part pretty much fully in the team drills today. And the two most notable players in that boat, one from each side of the ball on defense, Paulson Adebo was out there. I think he took just about every rep with the first team defense.
In fact, the entire first team defensive backfield was out there together, which was good to see.
Yeah, that was very good to see. But Adebo looked, he looked fully healthy. I don't think he would be out there playing just about every single team rep if he wasn't fully healthy. So that was great to see. And then on the other side of the ball, Theo Johnson also was out there participating in team drills. We were a little, I guess, unsure just because he had the season-ending foot injury late in the season. We weren't 100% positive whether or not he would be out there in full capacity, but it sure seemed like he was out there 100% because he was participating in 7-on-7s, 11-on-11s. He was making catches. Looked like the Theo Johnson that we started to see right before he suffered the season-ending foot injury.
Yeah, absolutely. John Michael Schmitz, who dealt with injuries late last year, he was out there as well. So it was good to see some of those guys out there. Micah McFadden had a pick that could have been returned for a touchdown later in practice as well.
Last play of practice.
Yeah, play of practice, exactly. So he made a couple good plays. Jalen Hyatt had a couple touchdown catches.
Yep.
One pitter-patter in the back of the end zone, another one on a little bit of a slant. So he got involved. He seemed to be put on some upper body weight over the past few months. I thought he was a little bit thicker, at least in the upper body.
That has certainly been noticeable. I mean, walking around just in the sleeveless shirts that most of the guys do, he certainly looks bigger. I don't want to speak for him and say that, he added muscle or pounds or whatever, but visibly just looking at him, he looks bigger, which is good to see.
Absolutely. A lot of quarterback movement, I thought, today, where a lot of play action rollout. You mentioned the one Jackson Dart run that was on a design. There was a cool play from Jameis where he played action, faked a rollout, spun back into the pocket, and he completed a pass on that. But I thought they were really leaning into, and it makes sense given the quarterbacks on this roster, Matt, that you're going to lean into moving the quarterbacks in and out of the pocket a lot. So I think we saw a lot of them moving the pocket to the right mostly because they're all right-handed quarterbacks, right? But a little bit to the left too, where to try to get the quarterbacks out of the pocket and on the move a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, that's something we know Brian Daboll loves to do with his quarterbacks. We saw it when he was in Buffalo with Josh Allen. We even saw it the last couple of years with Daniel Jones. Likes getting these guys on the move, especially when you have quarterbacks that are capable, really, of making these sort of throws on the move, on the run. Feel like we're probably going to see a good amount of that this season. I mean, if today was any sort of indication, we're going to see a lot of it.
Well, and given how important these OTAs are, and everything that happens in OTAs will translate 100% to the regular season. I mean, it's essential.
Of course.
I mean, it's just one for one. So it's pretty clear that, Tommy DeVito will be the Giants' best quarterback this year with his – he was only getting a couple, basically reps. And his first three were all touchdown passes. And the Giants – I'm sorry for you guys that are Malik Neighbors fantasy football owners. You're going to be a little disappointed this year because it's going to be undrafted free agent rookie wide receiver Jordan Bly. That's going to be the number one wide receiver this year. There's him and Tommy DeVito connected, not on one, not on two, but 3 touchdown completions over the course of practice. It was by far the best combination you saw from any two players all day.
I think the first 2 reps that Tommy was on the field, he was only out there for one play.
Correct.
Threw a touchdown. And it seemed like with all the quarterbacks, kind of as soon as they threw a touchdown, they would go on to the next quarterback. Tommy, the first 2 times, was out there for one play each because he immediately got out there, threw a touchdown, and then they moved on, got practice rolling still. So, yeah, they clearly had a nice little connection going between Tommy DeVito and Jordan Bly. As you said, day one of OTAs clearly is a clear indication of what will come week 1 of the regular season.
For the people that are not familiar with Bly, by the way, he's one of the undrafted free agents from this class, 6 foot, 166 pounds. Came out of Gardner-Webb. So 22 years old, rookie. So just someone to keep an eye on here as he makes a splash early.
He spent some time at Old Dominion first, I believe.
I believe that's correct, yes. You don't see many usually when you get the transfer, you don't get the mid-major transfer. You usually get the transfer from the small to the big, but he just went
like Cam Scadaboo,
Yeah,
who was out there today.
Sacramento skate up to Arizona State. So absolutely. But we saw one really nice pass from Russell Wilson showing that touch he likes to put. It was a perfect fade route to Darius Slayton, who kind of double tapped his feet on the sideline. I thought that was really nice.
He placed the ball perfectly right over the defender, between the defender and the corner of the end zone, right into Darius's hands. Beautiful throw, beautiful catch. Darius caught a couple of touchdowns today.
Yep.
He looked again, what we've come to grow accustomed to seeing from Darius Slayton is exactly what we saw. And Jackson Dart, his very first touchdown pass, of course, was to former college teammate Antoine Juice Wells. Who would have saw that coming, huh?
Wasn't his first completion, though. He had completions. Do we count rookie minicamp as first completions?
No, this is the first practice with the whole team.
Okay. Was that his first completion as well to Wells? I did not track that. I tracked all the passes. I got to look at my notes to see who his first completion was.
I believe so, because they were playing on the goal line, so that first completion.
Number 2. Yep, that would have been Juice Wells. Correct. Yeah, Juice Wells was the first. It was a little pass into the flat that he kind of ran it in for a touchdown. Correct. Yeah, that would have been Juice Wells. Good call. All right, so we did get 3 players also talk to the media after practice. We'll touch on that. Then we'll get to your calls at 201-939-4513. All right, Bobby Okereke first. He was his usual positive, upbeat self, which is what you like to see. And I thought it was interesting. He's like, yeah, look, I didn't kind of stuff the box score as much as I would have liked to last year. I think it should be more like it was 2 years ago. His back injury appears to be fine. It was a disc thing, he said. He did not have to have a procedure, which was good. But he seems to think that being in Bowen's system for a second year with the additional talent around him, that he should be poised for a pretty big second year here with Shane Bowen and the Giants.
Yeah, I mean, he's easily surrounded by the most talent he has ever been surrounded by, at least with the Giants. I mean, the defense last year had a good amount of talent throughout, but then adding Adebo and Holland, among other players, but those who leading the charge in the secondary, and then up front, obviously, start with Abdul Carter, Darius Alexander, Chauncey Golston, Roy Robertson Harris. Go down the list. Jeremiah Ledbetter. I mean, the defense is sort of the roster of defensive players. I don't want to say it's completely revamped because there obviously are some numerous core pieces that are returning, but they added some playmakers all over the defense.
Depending on how you want to do it, depending on how you want to classify it, you're probably going to have 3 or 4 new starters. Depending on, it's going to be almost 20, anywhere from 25 to 33% of the defense is going to be different.
Yeah, which is obviously, that's a big percentage of the defense. And it was clear listening to him speak that Bobby Okereke is very excited about it. He talked about the secondary additions. He talked about Abdul and some of the additions up front. He's very excited. And one of the things that I've talked about at times on the show over the last, I would say, 2 months, and we saw a little bit of in practice today. We're not going to go into the details, but I've said that, with all these new pieces, especially the pieces up front, it's going to allow Shane Bowen to get a lot more creative with where and how he lines up all of these different defensive playmakers. We saw that today because there's one play in particular I had in mind where there were just guys, the stalwarts of the Giants defense lined up all over the field, not where you would expect them lined up.
Hey, look, we can say it because Bobby Okereke said it during his media availability, right? He said there was one play where he was on the edge and Burns was off the ball.
That's the play I had in
Bobby
mind.
said it, and you're right. They move guys around a lot.
Yeah. So, again, only OTA, day 1 of team drills during OTAs, but that creativity that I know a lot of us have been hoping we would see this season from Shane Bowen and the defense, got a little glimpse of it today. And, if that carries into training camp, into the regular season, it's going to cause the offenses a whole lot of trouble to game plan for this Giants defense with just all these different playmakers that are capable of lining up basically anywhere on the field.
All right, let's go to the 2 other guys that spoke very quickly. Greg Van Roten said he was happy to be back, happy that he was back earlier this offseason than last. So that was good. Likes the quarterback room, and Bobby Okereke said there's 2 very different personalities in that quarterback room, but they both raved about Russell Wilson's leadership abilities so far, just kind of interacting with everybody on the team and just being a steadying positive influence. And just talk about the competition on the offense line because it's a deep room. So there's a lot of spots, roster spots in the depth chart that guys are going to be competing for over the course of the offseason.
Yeah, I mean, GVR, as we all know, was the only player on the offensive side of the ball, at least, that played every single snap last year. And he resigned, he came back, yet he even said, we are all out here competing. There's nothing being given to us. There's no starting jobs just being handed to us just because we had it last year. Everyone is out here competing. That's what you love to hear. Obviously, this time of year, there's not a whole lot you can really gain from the offensive lineman during these team drills because there's no contact, and it's not much an offensive lineman can do if he's not allowed to really make contact with the defender in front of him. But, Greg Van Roten, who obviously a veteran that's been around for a very long time, you expect, I guess, that sort of mindset that he expressed during his media availability today, but it was good to hear him really say it. And, he is certainly very excited about some of the young guys that are in that offensive line room. He spoke about Marcus Bowe very glowingly. Obviously, he hasn't known Marcus Bowe very long. Marcus has only been on the team for a month now. They've only been in the building together for, 2 weeks now, really? Mm-hmm. But, he's liked what he's seen from him so far, and he had a lot of good things to say about JMS. He seems to think that JMS is in line for a big jump in year 3. Yeah. And obviously, if JMS can make that big jump, that is going to help just raise the entire floor for this offensive line.
Yeah, Marcus Bowe, they moved him around throughout practice.
Yep.
Like they said, Joe Shane said they're going to use him primarily as a tackle early and then move him into guard. Evan Neal, as Brian Dable said before practice, was going to be transitioned into guards. He was going to play there.
We did see him there.
We did. So just that's kind of what we get. And then Javon Holland, he basically talked about how he's still kind of developing his leadership and earning the street cred necessary to be a leader with this group. And that's mostly what he talked about. But he was happy to be out there with those guys on defense.
Yeah, we know Javon Holland was one of the big team leaders for the Miami Dolphins, the last at least a year or two. And he basically said, look, I'm not walking in and no one's just crowning me as a team leader. That's something I've got to earn. I've got to earn the respect for everyone in this locker room, both on and off the field. And if I do that, the chips will fall as they may. And, again, he's a veteran that's been around the league now for 4 or 5 years. That's the type of, mindset you want to hear from a guy like that, especially this early in the year.
All right, let's get to your calls at 201-939-4513. We have a hard out today at 2:30. Our fearless leader wants us at a meeting upstairs, so we must hustle up or we'll be in big trouble. Sorry, Dave Dominic. 201-939-4513. All right, we have a lot of names here, so new names too. So I'm going to get to all you guys. It's going to be Kevin first, then Malachi, then Chris. Let's start with Kevin in Raleigh. He'll lead us off. Kevin, what's going on?
Hey, can you guys hear me? How you guys doing?
Yeah, we got you loud and clear, Kevin. What do you got?
Hey, just 2 quick questions and then just 1 quick point. First question is, do you guys see the Giants kind of adapting more of a running scheme, running the football more than they have in the previous years? Russell Wilson is at his best, with play action. We saw him, with the deep ball in Seattle. Do you guys see, the Giants kind of becoming a running first team, with a 2-punch with Scadaboo and Tracy? What are you guys' thoughts on that? My first question.
Kevin, I'm going to give a short answer. Yes. Yes. I think you are, because I think you're right. I think it fits what Russell Wilson likes to do.
Yeah, I agree. I think part of the reason why they have not been able to do that in recent years is because they've been playing so many games from behind. And obviously, if you're behind multiple scores,
great point,
in the second half, you're not going to be running the ball that often. So obviously, we expect the team to be more competitive in general. So yes, similar to John, I agree. I think we definitely will see more running this year. I don't necessarily will be run heavy, but definitely more than I think what we've seen in the last year or two.
And Kevin, to your point, a lot more play action pass
yeah.
than maybe we've seen before.
Yeah, definitely. And then my next question is, you guys mentioned Evan Neal is getting some playing time and practice time as a guard. Do you think that he will end up, winning the starting job, as a guard and taking that leap like, Becton did with the Eagles last year? Or do you guys see him kind of having to, still earn that spot and, maybe he'll start as a backup and then kind of transition in? What do you guys think of that?
I think Runyon's no problem, Kevin. Hang with us. I think Runyon's one of your starting guards if he's healthy. I don't think that's going to be a question.
Yep.
I think the other guard spot's wide open, to be honest with you. I think this is a competition. Greg Van Roten said it at his press conference today that all these guys are competing. I think Greg Van Roten is the stopgap, backstop. We know we can get good, solid level of play from him if we need him, so he's there if we need him, right? Then you have Evan Neal, who's moving into guard, to your point. I think he has the physical ability to do it. I think he can handle it. To Van Roten's point when he spoke at the press conference, look, guard's different than tackle. You have less space to deal with, but guys get on you faster. There's more twists and games and stunts, blitzers, things like that. So there's different challenges at guard, even though there's less space that Neal has to navigate. You have Jake Kubas, who, when we were in our TV production meetings with Coach Dable in the preseason last year, he spoke glowingly about how much they loved Kubas. I think he has a legitimate chance to fight for playing time. And then the other guy I'll throw in there, and the Giant fans might roll their eyes at me, if they give Josh Azudu a chance to just play guard, right, just as a guard, I think he has a chance to compete as well. Those would be the 4 guys that I would look at that you can compete. And Aaron Stinney's a veteran too that has been with the second team at that guard spot for the last 2 seasons now. So, or last season and now this season. So those are the guys that I think will compete at guard. I think, Kevin, it's a good problem to have. I could see Van Roten, Neal, Kubas, or Azudu, depending on how this goes this offseason, all potentially be a starter at guard.
Yeah, I think, again, it's only May 28th.
Yes.
I think right now the favorite would probably be Greg Van Roten.
Agreed.
Considering he played every snap last year, had a very solid season, and Evan Neal hasn't trained at guard in how many years? 4 or 5 years? So right now, I think GVR would probably be considered the favorite, but I do think in an absolute ideal world, Evan Neal looks incredible at guard, wins that starting job, and then Greg Van Roten can sort of be your primary backup at all 3 positions on the interior.
Yeah.
Because he's had some starts at center last year when JMS got hurt. He obviously plays guard, can play either guard position. So I think in an ideal world, throughout training camp, Evan Neal can prove himself at guard and win that spot, and then GVR can be your number 1 backup.
Yeah, Kevin, I don't think GVR needs a ton of reps. He's 34?
35.
35, right? 35 now?
Right.
Like, he doesn't need a ton of preseason, or spring and summer reps. So I think there'll be a lot of reps for some of those younger guys to be able to chance to prove themselves, especially with Runyon still coming back from an injury last year. So put all that together, I think the young guys will all be given ample chance to show what they can do.
Yeah.
Right, and then just a quick 2 points, and I'll take it off the air.
Sure.
One point is, we see injuries happen all the time, across the NFL. Last year, we were able to get, second-round pick, for Leonard Williams. I think Kayvon. If we see an injury coming up, for other teams, or if Joe Shane gets a call, for a second-round pick, for Kayvon, I think you got to pull the trigger there. And then my final point before I go here is, the last few years, tackling has been a huge issue for this team. They really got to clean that up. They got to, we've been up too many big plays the last few years, so they got to clean up the tackling. But thanks for taking my call, guys. Thank you.
No, Kevin, look, on your second point, you're absolutely right. That was a big problem with the run defense over the course of last year, just inconsistent tackling. Micah McFadden got better in that area. 2 years ago, he gave up a lot of missed tackles. Last year, he was better. It could always still improve some more. Okereke, like we talked about, did not have the year he wanted to last year. But look, the tackling the run defense has to get better. It just has to. And if that doesn't get better, to Matt's point earlier, all this great stuff we're talking about on defense and running the ball on offense and play action, if you're down 2 scores, you can't do any of that. And the easiest way to get down 2 scores is to not be able to stop the run early in games.
Yeah, 100%. And then just to your first point, I'm not going to sit up here and say for sure that something will or will not happen, but all I know is that since the Giants drafted Abdul Carter, Joe Shane, I believe Coach Dable, players, like multiple people have spoken about how you can't have enough edge rushers and pass rushers.
They are not looking to trade Kayvon Thibodeau.
I don't think that is something that they will pursue. Obviously, if the phone rings, who am I to say whether or not you pick it up or listen or whatever?
No, you always listen. You always listen.
But Joe Shane in particular, who would be the one that would be making that call, has talked about how the last 2 Super Bowl championship teams that this organization had were built around the pass rush and having multiple guys on the edge, not just 2 starting edge rushers, but guys behind them as well, guys that you could line up all over the defensive line. Joe has talked about that multiple times. So I don't think that they will be looking to trade Kayvon. And also, again, as we said, not a whole lot you can gain from offensive linemen and defensive linemen in these OTA practices. But Kayvon Thibodeau looked fired up out there today. He looked energetic and, like a man on a mission. I don't know how else to put it. I know it's a little cliche, but
no, I agree with
he
you.
really looked fired up. And if, I would love to see once training camp starts and we can actually start seeing some contact between the linemen, love to see if he looked like he did today. Because if so, he could be in for a very promising good year.
So they're doing a live shot on ESPN, How does Amon Shumpert look older than Udonis Haslem? I feel like Haslem's got to be like 10 years older than him, right? For all the years he was in the league.
Isn't he still in the league? Isn't
No,
he
I
still,
no,
like the
I-
last guy on Miami.
Was he still?
I don't know.
I thought he finally retired.
Was he?
I could be wrong.
Like last guy on the bench, last assistant coach.
Yeah, I don't know what he was, but he's got to be older than Shumpert, right?
I would think he was in Miami for like 15 years.
More than that, I think he's
He was
almost
there
close to
for
20. Hold on, let me look this up now. I'm curious.
LeBron's tenure in Miami. He was a veteran, I believe, when LeBron.
All right, so Udonis Haslem's 44.
Okay, so
he's older than me.
He's definitely retired.
The last NBA player in the league that's older than me. When did he actually retire? Well, let me see. Did he actually get any minutes this year? No, I'm curious. Now I got to look it up. And we'll get to you. I promise you guys.
It
No,
says
it's 2023.
2023.
Okay, and then
That's
how
longer
old?
than I would have expected.
I know.
Sheesh.
And Amon Shumpert. Yeah, no, he started in 2000. He's only 34. Amon, come on, man. He looks older than Udonis Haslem. Does he not?
I don't know, man. I think it's just the beard looking
think
all
so?
scruffy.
Man, maybe. I don't know. It shows you got to groom.
But does it mean you want to talk about the Knicks now?
No, I do not, actually. That's okay, unless you want me to get really upset and then potentially get thrown off the air.
I do not.
But doesn't they'll come side by side. Doesn't Haslam look younger than him?
Yeah, but
He does,
again,
right? Yeah, I know. It's the beard. I think it's the beard. I'm with you on that. All right, 201-939-4513. Let's go to Malachi down in Florida. Malachi, what's going on?
Hello, I'm doing good. I had 2 questions for you guys.
Sure.
My first question is, would you guys say Russell Wilson is known for extending drives? Because I feel like last year we would be 3 and out very quickly.
Extending drives or extending plays?
Just staying on the field for longer times to tire out the enemy's defense.
I would say he's certainly more adept at it than whomever the Giants had at quarterback last year.
yeah,
How about that?
He is an accurate passer, and obviously being an accurate quarterback helps extend drives.
And he makes explosive plays down the field, too. Very efficient. He doesn't turn the ball over, either. He protects the ball.
Right, because I feel like last year I just felt like, one, we were always throwing the ball before the sticks and trying to get yak after 3 yards, and that didn't work very well for us. And then my second question to follow up that would be, do you think it's important that the Giants offense just adjust ball security, just making sure that when he does those deep balls and the receivers catch him, they make sure they hold on to the ball? Because I do feel like last year we did have a couple plays where if they just hold on the ball, like the game completely turned in our favor. It's just sometimes we would drop the ball.
Yes. Look, I think Russell Wilson is going to throw the ball down the field. That's what he does. He throws 9 routes down the sideline. It's his favorite throw. Like, all you got to do is when the trade for George Pickens happened, right? And they're showing all these highlights because, ESPN nothing else to talk about because it was a quiet time of year. And they're showing all these George Pickens highlights. The quality of the deep balls that Russell Wilson was putting on George Pickens on those deep throws over the shoulder, it was incredible. But for those plays to work, Russell Wilson has to be able to trust his wide receivers when they only have a step and it's tight coverage to position themselves properly, which means don't get trapped on the sideline. You want to say, give yourself 4 or 5 yards to give the quarterback room to place the ball on your outside shoulder. But also, when you don't have separation, does he trust his wide receiver to go up and make a contested catch? Where the wide receiver is not going to let the cornerback get after the ball, jump for it, get an interception. So those two things have to go side by side, right? The wide receivers have to be technically sound, be where they have to be, and Russell Wilson has to trust them to be able to win some of those 50-50 balls. So you're right. The onus is on the wide receivers a lot because we know Wilson wants to throw those balls, but a guy like Slayton, who has a history of drops in his career, has to be consistent catching it. We've seen Malik Neighbors being pretty darn good on contested catches. But again, a guy like Jalen Hyatt, who's shown speed, but the physicality at the catch point, can he do that? Wanda Robinson's a shorter guy. How is he going to be in those situations? So, yes, Malachi and Matt, I think it's key that these wide receivers do what they need to do to give Russell Wilson the confidence to attempt those types of throws down the field so he doesn't believe bad things are going to happen.
Yeah, and I think that's honestly one of the most important things that can happen during these next couple of weeks of spring practices where, again, there's no contact. There's not a whole lot you can really do other than just for the new guys sort of learn the system and somewhat more of a game setting. But yeah, these receivers, and I'll even throw the tight ends as well into that group, and even the running backs, honestly, because the running backs are going to be catching passes. All of these guys need to work with Russ because Russ is right now the starting quarterback and start developing that chemistry to, as you said, get to a point where Russ will have full confidence no matter who's the receiver, tight end, or running back running that deep route to throw that moon ball, the famous moon ball, and have confidence that at the very worst case scenario is an incomplete pass. He's not going to have to worry about, turnovers, interceptions like that. So, yeah, we didn't see it today because all of the plays during team drills happen inside the 10-yard line. But I would be willing to bet that will be something we see over the next couple of weeks once they start extending the offense, having them start from a little bit further back than just the 10-yard line.
Thank you for answering my questions, and I fully agree. I really am looking at Slayton specifically because I feel like Neighbors is obviously going to be covered a lot. So I feel like it's really going to be up to Slayton to, make those plays when Neighbors isn't able to because of how people are going to be covering him. So thank you for taking my call.
No, Malachi, good stuff. And by the way, folks, I love all these new names we're getting on these phone calls. I'm assuming a lot of you guys are watching on YouTube since we started streaming on YouTube a few weeks ago. Great to see all the new names. And thanks. We're getting multiple thousands of people on our daily YouTube stream, which is great. We know a lot of you guys are at work. It's probably hard to tune in and check us out live. And for all the people, all our old callers, of course, that are on the app and on the website, we love you guys, too. We just love seeing some new names. You guys have come up with some great questions. We appreciate it. All right, let's go to Chris in Arizona. He's up next. Hey, Chris.
Hey, guys. How you doing?
What's up, man?
Good. How are you, Chris?
Hey, good. Just I was looking at the cap space for this year, and I think Darren Waller and Daniel Jones are kind of the last two people that we're paying for this year, and Joe Shane's going to have quite a bit of spending money going into 2027. Just kind of curious to see what your guys' thoughts are as far as what position that we might be able to target to kind of open up our window, assuming the season kind of goes in the right direction. Jackson Dart plays really well, and he's going to be on that rookie deal. So just kind of seeing where we can move that money to really make this team competitive with the Eagles and the Commanders and the Cowgirls.
No, great question. Look at the problem with the NFL now is that with the cap going up every year
and going up substantially,
it's become very easy for teams to re-sign their own players, right? With the cap continuing to go up, the way you can structure contracts now with void years and stuff like that, fewer and fewer really good players are becoming available. And when they do become available, guess what? Teams franchise tag them. So, this year you're heading into free agency, like, T. Higgins, let's go sign T. Higgins. Pretty good, right? T. Higgins. Well, no, not so much. He gets franchise tagged. And that's going to happen to guys that play a lot of these positions that are more valuable. So I'll go through a couple classes with you right here, Chris. I'm going through Spot Track here, and I think that's probably the best way to do this. If you want to bring over the cap up, Matt, or something like that, I guess we can take a look at that too. But again, we'll see if these guys actually become available. Trey Smith got franchised this year, right? So he theoretically could be a free agent next year, a guard. I would look at wide receiver. That, to me, is a position that I would highlight. I think the Giants have good depth at wide receiver. I'm not sure they have a true, impactful number two. The Cowboys' number two is George Pickens. The Eagles' number two is Devontae Smith. The Commanders' number two is Deebo Samuel. Compare that to what's here. You know what I mean? Those guys all have made Pro Bowls before. Or I think Pickens might have made one Pro Bowl, maybe not. But he certainly has Pro Bowl ability. So I think wide receiver is a position I would look at. But again, wide receivers generally don't become available. I'll throw a couple names. Next year, Deebo Samuel is going to be a free agent. That's a name I mentioned. Cortland Sutton, who's looking for a contract extension, could be a free agent. This is the 2026 season, in 2026. Terry McLaurin right now is without a contract extension. He could be a free agent after next year. Christian Kirk, who got moved this year in a trade to the Texans. Remember, they just drafted Jalen Noel and Jaden Higgins this year. Be very surprised if they brought him back. So Christian Kirk is a guy that could be a free agent at wide receiver next offseason. That's 2026. Giants are projected right now to be somewhere around the middle of the pack in free agency money next year. But again, with the way their contracts are set up, if they need money, they can easily restructure contracts. And I'll just go through the wide receivers then the following year. And Matt, if you want to hit another position, you certainly can. Tyreek Hill, he'll be 33 at that point, so that doesn't get me all that excited. Michael Pittman Jr., if you're looking for a big-bodied wide receiver, he could be a free agent in 2027. Chris Godwin, who just signed a short-term contract extension, he could be a free agent again in 2027. Again, he'll be a little bit older then, but it is what it is. So wide receiver is a spot I would look at and I would highlight just as a spot where, look, you could use some help at that spot. a true number 2 to pair with Malik Neighbors. Again, I think if they didn't trade that extra pick for Dart this year, it would not have shocked me, Matt, if they used that pick on a wide receiver to add some weapons to the passing game. So that's where I would look. You're right, 2027, they're scheduled to have a ton of cap space that year. And last thing I'll say before I hand it over to Matt here is after this year, you talked about Darren Waller being off and Daniel Jones dead money being off. Theoretically, to your point, if Jackson Dart plays well, you theoretically, if you don't want to re-sign Russell Wilson after the year, you keep Jameis as your backup at a very reasonable backup rate, and then that's another big chunk of money you get back. And when the quarterback position is cheap, that's when you can be really aggressive in free agency, right? That's when you have to make the moves. Like, why do you think the Eagles were so aggressive when they had Jalen Hurts on his rookie deal? And by the way, they still haven't started paying him. His cap number has been, I don't think it's gone over $4 or $5 million yet on any individual season with the way his contract is structured.
The Howie Roseman magic.
Right. What that magic is going to, show up and appear in 3 or 4 years, and then their cap situation is going to be a disaster, and he'll be, retired in Barbados with Super Bowl rings, and he's going to be fine with that, but that's going to be what we're looking at, right? But the Giants can be very aggressive the next couple of years while they're working on this rookie quarterback contract and they're not paying quarterbacks. So wide receiver is one of those spots that I think you can look at, even though, again, that's one of the positions, to me at least, very seldomly become available because it's so valuable. But that's at least one position I would look at, Matt. How about you?
Yeah, the only thing with wide receiver is the Giants gave Darius Slayton a decently big contract.
Right.
Not like not getting paid as a number 1 receiver, obviously, but
he's in line with number 3s around the league.
Fair, but we know that the team, the coaching staff likes Wan'Dale Robinson as well.
His contract's up after the year, though.
Yeah, he obviously is entering a contract year, so I guess this season will play go a long way in determining his potential future. I think the Giants would be more likely to add, in my opinion, a receiver in the draft next year.
And I always
like
and I'm
a day
with you.
1 or day 2 pick, because
I love any receivers in the draft.
I think there's also a benefit to having a young receiver grow with your young quarterback. Having them sort of, obviously it wouldn't be the same exact year, it would be 1 year apart, but having those guys grow and develop together, both on their rookie contracts, I think would be beneficial to both of them. So to me, and especially Chris, because you mentioned the Eagles here, I think the offensive line would be where I would look. And I feel like
I'm looking at that next.
You could say that honestly just about every offseason for go back, a decade now, maybe even more. But and there's nothing against the current Giants offensive line, because I think that this offensive line, which we saw the first 6 weeks of last year play very solid football, I think is going to be a lot better than what we saw last year, assuming Andrew Thomas stays healthy. But the Eagles team, they are so dominant because of their work in the trenches. And I think the Giants have done a very good job on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, I've said this. I think the Giants are going to have one of the best defensive fronts in the NFL this year. Between all those guys at edge rusher, the All-Pro Dexter Lawrence, we're both very high on Darius Alexander. He's probably going to need a little bit of time to grow, but you have other veterans like Roy Robertson Harris, Chauncey Golston, Jeremiah Ledbetter, that each have sort of their own, I guess, niche strengths. And so I do think the defensive front is going to be potentially dominant this year. I think the offensive line is going to be a lot better than what we saw for most of the year last year. But if you want to talk about getting the Giants to that level of, closing the gap between themselves and the Eagles, I think what would help that in a long way is becoming dominant on your offensive line up front. And so Andrew Thomas obviously is here to stay. The other positions around, on the line, if you're thinking long-term, years from now, I don't know for sure if anyone is solidified for years to come, just given their contracts, honestly.
Yeah, Veverone's a free agent after the year, Illumino's a free agent after the year, and Schmidt just has 2 years left on his rookie deal. So
yeah, and Runyon
he's on a 3-year deal, so I think two more.
Yeah. So just thinking long-term, if you want to, dedicate a good chunk of cap space on a potentially elite player. And again, similar to what you said about wide receiver, it's not too often that an elite offensive lineman hits the market, because why would the previous team let that guy just walk out the building?
A guard, you will get him occasionally, but tackle is extremely rare.
Maybe the Giants approached the situation sort of what the Commanders just did this past offseason with trading for Laramie Tunsil and then signing him to a huge extension. That's one way of securing, a top-tier tackle. Obviously, you would love to be able to just sign a guy and not have to sacrifice the draft pick as well. But as we saw last year with getting Brian Burns in this building, sometimes it costs a little bit to get that top-tier talent. And if you want to take that step and that leap into the upper echelon of teams around the league, sometimes you got to make moves like that. And it certainly helps if you have your starting quarterback on a rookie contract.
I'll just throw a couple names out there. Next year, Tevin Jenkins, a free agent. Kenyon Green, who's had a rough start to his career. Zion Johnson's a free agent. Isaac Seumalo's a free agent. Wyatt Teller's a free agent. Trey Smith's a free agent. And then you go to the 2027 draft class. Quentin Nelson, at age 31, will be a free agent. But again, a lot of these guys are going to get re-signed. So just keep that in mind. Michael Onwenu is up again. Kevin Dotson will be up. John Runyon, to our point, right? 2 more years left. He'll be up. Mekhi Becton will be up. So there are guys that are interesting. But look, I think it's offense, and I think I hit the skill position spot. You hit the offensive line. I think both of those make a lot of sense. Where, look, the Giants still have to score more points, Chris, and they added a lot to the defense this offseason. They drafted Jackson Dart. They drafted Thomas Fidone. They did not add a ton to the offensive side of the ball. And they drafted Scatterbo, obviously. Thank you. But they did not add a ton of new pieces to the offensive side of the ball from a veteran standpoint in free agency.
I would say the moves that they made in that regard were more depth pieces. Like they added a lot of depth on the offensive line. Veterans.
Yep. And a couple wide receivers, too, with Pascal, Little Jordan Humphrey.
For sure.
Like
but
that.
Not, as Chris, as you mentioned, not, top-tier starting elite level of players.
Yeah, quarterback is where they did their damage on offense in the offseason.
It's the most important position.
Right.
So,
was that a good enough answer for you, Chris?
Yeah, that was solid. I appreciate all the info you guys put out, and hoping for a good season for the mental health of the entire fan base. And I think a good season is going to go a long way to who we could bring into the building. I think if we got a winning record next year, I think that's going to help us maybe attract some talent to really get us over that hump that I think that we're in right now. So
thank you, Chris.
guys.
Appreciate the call. And look, you just got to acquire these guys however you can acquire them. Like, you just got to keep getting better players in the building. If it has to be via trade, then it's via trade. But obviously, free agency just straight up would be preferable. So that's what you got to do. Just keep adding good players. All right, we're going to squeeze in 2 more calls before we have to say goodbye at 2:30. Let's go to Gavin in Boca Raton, and then Adrian in Phoenix will wrap us up. Gavin, what's going on?
We're getting calls from all over the country.
I love it. We're all over the place. What do you got, Gavin?
What's going on, guys? How you doing?
We're great.
Good.
Awesome. I just wanted two points. One kind of, I guess, is more to earlier caller, but the first one I want to get to is Russell Wilson's playing style, being that he's 5'10", maybe 5'11". I haven't followed much of his actual offensive career. I know he played for Seattle. He's obviously at one point a Hall of Fame style player. I wouldn't say he is at this point in his career. But what kind of offense are we looking at here? I know he's never really had much of a great quick game. I know they like to run the ball when they were in Seattle. To be honest, Denver, I wasn't really following, even though I know stylistically it didn't work for him. But that was a lot of quick game style offense. So what exactly are we expecting? Is it going to be more like a run and shoot where the guy is going to be under center most of the time, trying to read the defense from under center, handing the ball off, and then taking deep shots? Is that what we should expect?
Yeah, Gavin, what we saw last year with Pittsburgh, and that's the most recent iteration we've had of him, where we've seen it work to an extent. Their offense was certainly a lot better with Wilson under center than it was with Fields, right? It was a lot of under center play action, and that's what Arthur Smith likes to do, right? That's what Arthur Smith's that's what his style is as an offensive coordinator at Pittsburgh. A lot of under center play action deep down the field to the sideline. He's a big sideline deep ball thrower where he's going to trust this guy to win, trust his guys to get behind the defender and make some catches. If he doesn't have that open, you're going to see a lot of checkdowns. So it's a lot of his deep ball. All right, deep ball's not there. Get to 2. All right, maybe that's not there. Then you'll see a lot of short throws to the tight end, short throws to the running backs. If you look at Najee Harris's and Jalen Warren's receiving numbers last year, they both caught a lot of passes. That's because Russell Wilson, if the deep ball's not there, he's going to check it down a lot. So that's what I think it's going to look like, Matt. Play action, deep balls, and if not, it's going to be a bunch of checkdowns.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't really have much to add. I think you nailed it. That's what you expect to see.
So they're not going to run we used to run a lot of mesh because that's what Jones could run and see over the offensive line. We're not going to see a lot of that. You don't think it's not going to be a lot of zone beaters like that?
I don't think you're going to see a bunch of short over the middle stuff because, to your point, I think that's difficult for Russ in terms of seeing over the offensive line. And if you look at his career, he does not have a ton of high volume years throwing over the middle. You will see some deeper digs and posts down the field because that's easier to see. But I think you'll see less of that, those double crosser mesh concepts, those sort of things. And, a bunch of those, one of the favorite things Daniel Jones liked to do throwing the ball was hitting Wanda Robinson, a lot of those quick option routes over the middle, right? Use quick stop routes, turn right or left based on where the defense is. I don't think we're going to see quite as much as that with Russ, just based on his stature and his history in terms of where he throws the ball.
Yeah, I mean, what we've come to learn about Brian Dable is he's going to sort of cater the offense to his quarterback's strengths. Correct. And the strengths of, Daniel Jones are very different than the strengths of Russell Wilson. So I think we will see, definitely there will be some changes. I think we'll see more deep shots down the field because that is obviously one of Russell Wilson's big strengths, his accuracy down the field, which at least last year we did not see quite as much at the quarterback position.
Okay, and maybe more some on-schedule plays. That would be nice, keeping the offense on schedule.
Yes, I think that's what they're going to like. Now, Russell Wilson does hold the ball now, though. Just keep in mind, that has also been a part of his history. Paul and I looked at this last week. I think there's only been 1 or 2 seasons where he's had a long career now, where he's been sacked fewer than 40 times because he holds on to the ball. Now, that's good. Sacks are bad, but is it better that he holds on to the ball, takes a sack, then throws it into coverage or throws a pick? So there are positives and minuses. He's been one of the best quarterbacks in terms of protecting the football in his career. His interception rate is really low. He does not turn it over, but he will hold the ball and take some sacks. So that's kind of the give and take you have with Russell Wilson in his play style.
Right. I think that's pretty much what look, I want big plays, but I also want protection, and, I want to keep the offense on schedule. The longer we hold the ball, the better.
Of course.
The other point that I wanted to make, which I think is, I've seen it made several times by several people, not necessarily, the caller kind of triggered it in my brain, an earlier caller, but it's we have to get rid of somebody because we can't have multiple players be good at something. When I hear the Kayvon Thibodeau, we need to trade him up because, we drafted Abdul Carter, now we can get rid of Thibodeau. It's like, no, why can't we have a strength? Why can't we have multiple guys be good at something? Why can't we have multiple waves of pass rushers, not just 2 or 1? We can have multiple things at once. And the timing, just thinking about the math of when these guys get paid, Burns' contract's going to be done by the time you really need to start paying Thibodeau, and Abdul Carter's not going to need to be paid for 3-4 years.
Yep.
So it's like we can have multiple things be good at once. We don't have to necessarily be, always, okay, we just have 2 edge players that can rush the passer. Why can't we have 3 or 4? Why does it have to just be 2?
Gavin, go ask the Eagles.
It drives me crazy every time I hear it.
Gavin, go ask the Eagles and ask them what it's like having, or the Cowboys, when they just throw waves and waves and pass rushers at the opposition. That's a good thing. It's not a bad thing.
Not only that,
right.
You don't even have to go to the division rivals. I know I've said this, I don't even know how many times, but look at
right.
the 2007 and 2011 Super Bowl teams here. Both of those teams had, layers and layers of pass rushers. They had the starting 2, I guess you could call them stud edge rushers, but had very, very talented edge rushers right behind them, and it allowed Spags.
Thank you, Gavin.
To
Appreciate
even
the call.
put multiple guys, more than 2 of those guys on the field at once. If you're an offensive line, how are you going to stop? And now turning it back to this year's team, if you're having a front 4 of Burns, Kayvon, Abdul Carter, and Dexter Lawrence just as your front 4, that's going to be a nightmare for opposing offensive lines.
And then bringing Chauncey Golston as a 5-man rush deal, my goodness.
Some of the times, when I hear people saying we need to trade Kayvon now, I don't get it. You have something that could be the strength of your team now. Lean into it.
Which, by the way, is the most important area to be the strength of your team.
Yes.
It's not boy, they got so many inside linebackers, they don't know what to do with the ball. That's not what we're talking about here.
No, because having an elite pass rush is going to just make the entire defense better in every single aspect. It's going to help the run defense. Correct. It's going to help every level of the defense. So don't just ship Kayvon out of town. Let's lean into this hopefully strength of this team, and hopefully that becomes the identity of the 2025 Giants and beyond.
It is a force multiplier, right? Yeah. It helps everything else. All right, final call of the show is Adrian out in Phoenix. Adrian, you want to talk about the defense too. What's going on?
Yeah, how you doing, man? I just want to jump on you guys, piggyback off what you guys were just saying, like, because coming into this all season, I've never felt like my back was against the wall, just as a fan, and like Chris was saying from Arizona earlier, just the mental health from the Giants standpoint, like from like the Giant fan base in general, man. It's like there's been a cloud over our head, cloud over this city for the last. Man, to be honest, man, since Daniel Jones has been here, I'm not the biggest fan, but I've been kind of ready to get rid of that guy since like year 2, year 3. Just from what I've seen early on, and it just played out the way I kind of expected.
Look, Adrian, bottom line, real quick, Adrian, there's only been 2 playoff seasons since 2012. I think that's pretty much sums it up.
No, 100%, 100%, and I agree with that. And I'm not putting it all on Daniel Jones, but I'm just saying I just feel like when you're the captain of the ship, you got to put the blame on who's ever driving,
No,
but coming into this off season, I'm just glad Joe Shane actually stepped up a little bit and kind of attacked those key areas that I think we were all kind of looking for, I think he executed the draft pretty well. I'm past the stressing out phase of like watching the Giants, on Sundays. I'm not stressing no more. It's more seeing is believing. I got to see it to believe it. I'm in that kind of headspace now. I'm not sweating on Sunday. I just want to watch it and watch competitive football again. And right now it looks good on paper. I think it's the most enthusiastic I feel like, going into the off season and going into, the new season. I feel like the most enthusiastic I've felt and been in the last couple of years. I think having a veteran like Russell Wilson, I don't think he's going to get to the Super Bowl. I'm not anything like that. I don't have a lot of hope. But I'm not very down either. It's like I'm not expecting 10 wins, but I'm also not expecting us to win 3 either. I'm somewhere in that middle ground. I guess you could say seeing it, just got to see it to believe it phase. And then, but I think having a veteran like Russell who can. I believe the last caller was talking about just extending those drives, extending those things where we're not going 3 and out. The thing that killed me with Daniel Jones, man, was just I feel like half the time we're not even getting past the 50-yard line until the third quarter, and I think that drove me insane. 3 and out, punt. And our deep by the third quarter, our defense is stopped. They're exhausted. Like so, we can't even if we have a close game, our defense can't even make a game-saving stop when we need them to because they've been on the field for 70% of the game. So I think having that Russell Wilson, having that veteran quarterback. Can at least, extend have our that time of possession. I think that will go way up a little bit. At least I'm hoping so. And I think that'll just help our defense out on that side of things, man. What do you guys think about that, man?
Adrian, good stuff, man. We got to roll. We're getting into this show. Thank you for the call. Awesome stuff.
Thanks, Adrian.
Look, the offense has been a tough watch. I mean, it's been a tough watch for a while. 2022 was a little bit of a reprieve from that, but it's not like they were averaging, I think, what were they at, 22 points per game that year, something like that, which is still middle of the league. It wasn't anything ridiculous. Otherwise, they've been in that 17-point range way too often the last 5-6 years. So, yeah, and I think your mental approach is good. I get it. If you're a fan, you have to see it to believe it. I get it. We've been through this too, folks. We understand. But look, I think there's some exciting young talent on the team, Matt, and there's reasons to be optimistic. But make them go out there and prove it on Sundays.
Yes, we've been up here expressing some optimism that we do think the team will take, some step this year. But we're right there with you. We all need to see it. Talk in May only counts for so much.
And again, it's a tough schedule, too.
It's a tough schedule. We just, look. At this point, I think we want to see a competitive season.
Go out there.
More wins than 3, 100%. I agree with Adrian on that. Definitely more wins than 3. But just, we got to feel like a competitive game each and every week.
Yeah, I feel like you have a chance to win every week. There were too many games.
No matter who we're playing.
Last 2 years, too many games you walked in and you were 6 minutes into the game and you sat there and I have no chance. This game's over. You have no chance in this game.
We need to take a step in the right direction. Doesn't have to be a humongous leap, although that would be nice.
Yes, sure.
But just a step in the right direction.
Yes, improvement. This was a good show, Citak. I haven't hosted with you in a while.
I know.
Fun.
You put me with Paul every time.
Well, he's on 4 times a week. Both of us are with Paul all the time. It's not just you. Trust me. For Matthew Citak, I'm John Schmeelk. That's Big Blue Kickoff Live presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the Giants. We're in the Hack and Sack Meridian Health Podcast Studio. Keep getting better. Thank you so much for being with us, everybody. We appreciate you being with us. Giants Huddle Podcast, by the way, we have a couple of interviews with the college assistant coaches for the Giants rookie class. We have Marcus Satterfield, Thomas Satterfield? It's Marcus Satterfield, right? I have Marcus, right. He was the tight ends coach for Nebraska with Thomas Fidoni. That was up late last week. And then Marcus Johnson, who coached Marcus Bowe. There's a lot of Marcuses going on at Purdue last year. That's up there now. And then we're going to get some other guys rolling out over the next few weeks as well. So make sure you check that out in the Giants Huddle podcast. All right, we have a meeting to get to. We got to run upstairs before we get fired, and we'll talk to you next time.